Hi guys, Will Terry here, and this video is going to be called What to Include in Your Illustration Portfolio. And before I get going, I just wanted to say, I want to give a little shout out to my friend Mel Milton, who had a successful Kickstarter campaign. If you go back and look at some of the videos we did together on his and my Kickstarter, you can check out both of those, and those are just click on videos, or maybe I'll link them if I can remember to do that. And a few other things, I wanted to talk about real quick is that this is the end of May 2016. And if you're going to be in the Phoenix area, or if you're in the Denver area in June, I'm going to be going to those Comic-Cons and selling my prints. So I'd love to see you there. If you can make it and stop by and say hi. And so there's a little bit of news there. Okay, so let's dive in. And this video is actually kind of a remake. I made this video a couple years ago, but then I decided to go a little bit more in depth on it and actually include a list. So you're going to I'll tell you how you can get this list for free. And there won't be any hoops to jump through or anything. It's not going to be hidden, or you're not going to have to do anything. Don't you hate that when people have free stuff and they send you their website and then you don't get the free thing because you have to sign up for something, or you have to it's not even there for some reason. So it's not going to be like that. Or you can write it down because I'm going to give it on this video. So the idea of this topic is basically twofold. One, I get a lot of questions along these lines, what should I put in my portfolio to get work? Or and recently, this in the last month or so, and I can't remember where the question came from. I've been a little scattered lately running the Kickstarter. But someone asked a question, and I apologize for not mentioning you by name or giving you credit for the question, because it's a great question. I want to answer this one as we get going in here. And the question was basically, in a nutshell, do I need to include all kinds of subject matters in my portfolio? If I don't like a specific subject matter, won't I be... if I'm faking it, it's not going to be my best work. If it's not my best work, then it's not going to get me work. So maybe I should not illustrate the kinds of things I don't like to illustrate. So I'm going to answer that a little bit later on. So the question that I would pose to you on this is, how big is your illustration net that you're casting out there? Because basically it is a numbers game, right? I mean, you've got the internet, you've got all the different art directors and editors out there that are looking for work, and why do they pick you over someone else? And do you have to include everything in there in your portfolio? That's a big question. I would like to start out by saying, and I know I've talked about this before, but art directors and editors are scared of you. Okay, just you have to know that going in. They're scared of you. They're scared of me. They're scared of every illustrator, except the ones they've worked for a long period of time. They're scared of new illustrators they haven't worked with. And the reason they're scared is because when they hire us, they're basically, when they pick us, they're putting their reputation behind us. So if we don't come through, we make them look bad, right? And if we make them look bad enough, it could, I'm not going to say it could get them fired, but it could potentially, if they have enough projects that go bad, it could be a factor in whether they stick around or not, or whether they are, don't get promoted, or who knows what could happen. But I mean, you have to, anytime you have a relationship with a client, you have to reverse engineer and try to understand. And this is a skill. This is high level thinking, right? But you have to really try to get into their head and try to understand what it's like to be them and what they're thinking of when they're hiring you. And it takes a lot of, the more you do it, the more you'll know those sorts of things, and you'll start to figure out things along the way. And things aren't as as you always think they are. I remember, when I first got my first jobs, when I was first getting hired, and talking to art directors on the phone, I was a nervous wreck. I was just afraid that I was going to say something wrong. And really, once they've picked you, you really can't say anything wrong. I mean, not unless you have Tourette's or or something. I mean, or if you get so nervous that you just say something stupid. And I've done a few of those. I remember one time, it was an art director, and she was talking, and I had one of those moments where I couldn't concentrate on what she was saying because my mind was wandering, and I was like, stay on subject, and this is part of my ADD. And as I was trying to concentrate on what she was saying, she said something to the effect of, because we don't want to put a lot of, and I can't remember the exact project that we were working on, but it was an illustration for a magazine. She was talking about don't put too many superfluous things in the illustration. And I said something like, yeah, and also I won't put extra things in there. My subconsciously, I think I heard what she was saying, but I didn't enough to stop myself from basically saying the exact same thing in a different word. And I realized it, and she realized it at the same time. There was this awkward pause, and yeah, you don't you don't want those. So so anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but just an anecdote there. So yeah, you're going to be, I know where I was going with that. One of the epiphanies that I had along the way was realizing that art directors that were calling me, or editors that were calling me, were nervous too a lot of the times. And I was like, wow, I think they were nervous talking to me. And, I'm just this person that works out of my home, and they work in New York City, and they were actually nervous to call me. So it goes both ways, and those are things that you kind of learn along the way. In order to, and the purpose for this video again is to say that if art directors and editors are nervous when they hire us, or when they're looking to hire us, one of the ways we can get past that, and their nerves are going to stop them from hiring us sometimes. So again, you will never know all the assignment work that you were up for. When your name was put out in a meeting somewhere, and said, these are illustrators that I'm considering working with, that I'd like to hire. What do you guys think of them? And they'll pass around samples, and you'll never know about it until you either get the email saying, hey, would you be interested in working with us on this project? Most of the time, you'll never know that you were even up for a job. Sometimes the worst is when you're up for it and then you don't get it. But the purpose of this video is to help you land those jobs with your portfolio more, to include things that will make the art director feel all warm and fluffy inside, right? That they can look at your portfolio and go, I know this illustrator can handle this assignment because I'm seeing it in the work. In other words, and they're very literal. So for instance, and I know of a lot of situations where this has happened, where because I've talked to a lot of art directors and editors, and they talk about this, and they'll be comparing and contrasting illustrators in a meeting, and they'll show portfolios, and maybe their illustration is that the story has to do with kids on a school bus or something, and they'll look at portfolios, and they'll see, they'll love all the work in the different portfolios, but then they'll see one illustrator who has even a car or something, a silly little car that they like, and they're like, well, I know that illustrator can draw a car or a school bus, because they're already drawing vehicles. Maybe they love drawing vehicles, and then the other ones, their first choice might have been the other illustrators, but because they don't see any vehicles in there, they might go, well, I don't know if they can do it or not. They're really that nervous about, and that specific, when really, if you're a good illustrator, if you're really working hard and you're learning how to draw, and you're loving your job, you can draw anything. And most illustrators will have no problem if it's not in their portfolio drawing it. But the reality is that a lot of times assignments are lost because The specific things they're looking for aren't reflected in their portfolio. So this, again, this is long-winded explanation of why I'm giving you this list, is to basically ask yourself, am I including all these things, or trying to hit all these? Now, you're not going to hit everything, but, and the other thing is, I think that if you're strategic, one illustration can actually one illustration can actually cover many topics that I'm going to put in this list right here. So, it's not like you have to have 100 illustrations in your portfolio. One illustration might have 10 of the items in here. And then, you're covering that many more things when they look through your portfolio. So, the other thing I would say before I get into this list is, you kind of need to think of yourself as a detective. And you really want to, in order to be a successful illustrator, you have to love illustration, and I'll just throw this out there too as a side note. I'm always amazed when I teach my illustration class at UVU every semester, and I'm always amazed at how many of the students, it seems to me like they don't like to draw. I can tell the difference right away. I can tell the ones that love to draw because their work just shows it, and they're drawing all the time. And the people that don't like to draw, when I give assignments, they're doing minimalistic work and then they're talking. So if you feel like that's you, like that you're kind of throwing a dart at a career board and it lands on illustration, you're like, well, maybe I'll try illustration. In order to thrive in this business, you have to be so passionate and fall in love with it, that it shows and is reflected in your portfolio. There are a lot of people that can draw well, but you look at their portfolio and it's uninspiring. It just, they're hitting the notes of the subject matter, but there's no love there. And that's very different from someone who loves what they're doing, but their skill level isn't quite there yet. So there's a big difference. And I can see passion in portfolios where the drawing is not that great, but there's a certain level, and it's hard to put a finger on it without actually looking at it. But you can tell when someone's had a lot of fun with an illustration. And again, it doesn't have to be amazing to convey that emotion. So anyway. And the other thing I wanted to say before I get to this list is, I think I'll go ahead and answer that question now, because I think it's probably a better place to put it right now. And that is, what if I don't like, the person that asked me earlier, what if I don't like drawing certain things? And my answer to that, because I thought about that a lot in the last few weeks, like what would my answer be? Because that was a really, really unique question. I really appreciate that. What if I don't like drawing certain things, and if I put them in my portfolio just to satisfy the list, but they're not good, will it detract from my portfolio? Okay, so the short answer is yes. If you make a bad drawing and but it hits one of the things on the list, you're better off leaving it out of your portfolio if it's not your best work. So the other thing is, and I did a video on strategically, I can't remember the name of it, but it's back a ways. Basically on the strategy of your portfolio, and I can't remember the exact title of it, and I apologize. It's after midnight and I'm kind of tired, but I really wanted to make this video as I'm going to be leaving this week to go to Phoenix. But basically, strategizing your portfolio so that you can attract the most amount of work from a client. And that's one of the things that I would say is part of the strategy is you're better off having a really short list of potent illustrations in other words, your best work. Your worst piece, and this is the hardest thing, I'm just not going to spend much time on this, but your worst piece is the piece that they will look at and go, that's what they do. Because we as human beings, we tend to look at people like for instance, and I know I've talked about this before. If you find out, if someone tells me, right, hey, the guy down the street, the guy like 3 blocks this way is an illustrator, What do I think of that person? I've never heard of them. I've never met them. What am I immediately going to think where they are on the food chain of illustrators? I'm going to think they're down lower simply because I've never heard of them before. And I feel like I've heard of a lot of the really good illustrators. And I feel like chances are I probably won't be surprised at how amazing they are. I'll probably be underwhelmed a little bit. And I think we're like that with everything. If you find out that, if you meet a stranger and they say, "Oh, I play basketball," you're not going to think, "I bet they're like amazing at basketball." You're gonna, I don't know. We have this feeling of like we've been let down so much that I think we all kind of tend to think people are lower, and then we're happily surprised when we find out that they're really good at something, right? So art directors, and I would do this if I were an art director. If I saw your portfolio and I saw 10 illustrations and I see the worst one in there, I'm going to realize that some of the better ones probably happen later, so maybe you're on your way up. But I'm also going to worry that maybe the bad ones were more recent, and maybe you got lucky with the other ones. Best to nix those. And some people have asked me before too, like, what if I cut out those and I only have 4 or 5 really good ones? And I'm like, that's time to get busy. You've got to get 4 or 5 more really good ones. You're competing against people that have those. You have to. It's like Charles Barkley said. I know I'm using basketball analogies right now. You got to go get the ball. Like, in other words, you have to move without the ball. You have to rebound. Nobody likes to rebound, but you gotta. If you want to be a pro ball player, you have to go out there and get the ball. And that means doing work without the guarantee of payoff. And so you've got to do that as an illustrator. You have to stay up late, work weekends, sacrifice, and make those amazing illustrations that are going to round out your portfolio. One of the reasons why I say this too is because when I go to conferences and review portfolios, sometimes a year will go by and I'll see the same images that I saw a previous year from people, and I don't see much change. Now, I realize people are busy. Some people have families, they have babies and things like that. And there's only so much time in the day. Lots of responsibilities, full-time jobs, all sorts of things. But again, usually people can find some time to snatch here or there, and you've really got to just make it a priority, if you really want to compete. Okay. So to answer that question, which I'm skirting around, what if I don't like certain things? Or what if I don't like drawing certain things? My short answer on that is, or my long answer on that is actually that you need to, the best illustrators, they will learn to love drawing anything. Okay. So if you don't like drawing something, the first thing I start thinking is, you don't know how to draw it well, or you struggle with it, so you want to avoid it. And if you think about the Disney animators and the artists that work at any animation studio, or the top artists that work in picture books, except a lot of the top artists in the children's book world are actually authors, and so they will actually tend to write stories that they want to illustrate. But let's take it into animation. I mean, like, you're working on a film. You can't tell your boss, "Hey, I really don't like drawing aliens. That's like my thing. I just have this thing. I don't like drawing aliens. I know the movie's about aliens, but I would rather not draw them." No, and they get the subject and they own it. They make it theirs. And so when I get a book assignment, I'm looking at the story first. I really want to illustrate an amazing story, a story that changes me emotionally. And when I get that, I don't care what the subject matter is. I'm gonna turn it into mine. I'm gonna take that subject matter and make it fun for me. It does have to be fun for you, but I think that like a lot of times when I teach my class at school, I'll give them assignments. And I'll try to mix it up. One time we'll do something that's more, medieval, and there's dragons and things like that. Because I think, well, a lot of people would probably like drawing dragons. And there's always people who are like, "Oh, dragons." and then we'll do one where there's kids in it, and people are like, oh, kids. And then other people are like, yay, we get to draw kids. And the thing is like, it's all just shapes. It's shapes, value, color, lines, texture. It's all the same. And I think the more accomplished illustrators start to realize that all they're doing is manipulating shapes. It's not a dragon. It's not a car. It's not a bus. It's not a tree. It's not a pig. It's just a shape. You're not making a pig. You're not making a dragon. You're just playing with shapes, and play with the shapes that will make it yours. That'll make it fun for you. And that's what the top illustrators do. So that's my answer to that one. Is don't avoid stuff because, like, I don't know, just saying you don't like drawing a certain thing to me is like, that's where I was 30 years ago, because I had things that I didn't like to draw, and if I think back, it's because I didn't draw them well. But and this is a shameless plug. We have a class at svslearn.com that Jake Parker did called How to Draw Everything, and there really is there isn't a it's not like you go to horse school and you learn how to draw horses, even though horses are super hard to draw. If you learn the fundamentals of drawing, you really can draw everything. Now, can you get better at drawing certain things? Yes, because if you draw them over and over and over again, you're going to get better at them. But I would suggest looking at that class. Okay, so here's the list. And then when I'm finished giving you this list, I'm going to tell you where you can go and get it for free. Again, there will be no trickery involved. And if for some reason you can't find it, you can always email me and I'll shoot it to you. But don't do that because you're lazy and you're not going to go about it the right way, right? Don't do that to me because I don't need the extra work. Okay. What to include in your portfolio. So the first thing is, I think you should, and I've got my portfolio here that you were staring at this static page the whole time, but I think you should experiment with spot illustrations, types and sizes of illustrations. So spots, vignettes, full pages, spreads. So like if I just look on here, this would be an example of a spot illustration. So it's just basically a character or an object on a white background. And there's a lot of demand for that in the children's book world. And then if we look for like a vignette, we'd be talking about something like this, where you have a partial background in there, but it's kind of a free form shape. Here's another one right here. And then a full page, which is pretty obvious. Here's like a full page illustration. And all of these are needed. And if you're looking, I'm mostly talking about children's books, but in comics, you have the same kinds of illustrations. Any sequential art, you're going to find all of these. A spread would be more like this, a wide shot where you could have a gutter going down the middle, a gutter for a page turn, right? So it crosses 2 pages. Okay. Color schemes, I think you should have full color, black and white, and even like some limited color, some monochromatic stuff. So like on my portfolio, most of this stuff is color. That's kind of been my signature style, is having a lot of color. And I don't really do a whole lot of limited palette stuff, although I have tried some. Like this is really kind of more of a limited one. Still got a lot of color in it. That's not typically my thing, but I have started playing around with that more in some of the drawings that I've been doing for my fan art pieces. And so you can see, these are, something more like this, which has some color in it, but it's really monochromatic. There's a lot of need for that, and also just black and white stuff, and really controlling the values. And early on, when I started out, I could not do. Again, the reason for having this in your portfolio is I couldn't. I would eliminate black and white stuff from my portfolio because I was horrible at it, and it was like it should have been one of the easiest things to do, and I just didn't learn how to control my values when I was in school. So my black and white stuff was all way too dark, and I just couldn't see it. I didn't hit all the notes, and so like if you take an illustration like this, you in a black and white, just real quick, you should have really dark darks. You should basically cover 3 basic tonal areas. You should have your really light colors that go to white. So in these tones right here, if we've got 0 to maybe 20 or 30%, and then we've got these medium tones in here that really look like these middle grays, and on the helmet here, and then those dark tones. So it's really important to demonstrate that, because if you don't show that in your portfolio and you just have color work, a lot of times you'll get eliminated for black and white stuff. And there's a lot of need and a lot of demand for black and white. So that's another thing to think about. Ages. You should be showing adults, teens, children, and babies in your portfolio. So, I've got some adults. I don't have as much as I should, and I'm kind of a bad example. I don't have as many situational things with kids and adults, and I haven't been asked to do that stuff. If I had more of that stuff, I'd probably get asked to do more of that stuff. So I have done some, but I don't have a ton of that. Another one is race. So Asian, covering the Asian race, Indian, Hispanic, Caucasian, African. You want to make sure that you're hitting those notes. And in fact, I'm just going to bring this up and pull this in, because I should have queued it up ahead of time. But I thought I would bring this in and show you this, because this is actually an illustration that I did specifically to hit those notes of an adult and kids. And we've got an Indian kid or Hispanic kid, a Caucasian girl, another Caucasian guy, an African American girl, and then some other kind of random kids in the background that you really can't tell. But that's a big thing in publishing, is making sure that you're hitting those different notes, and trying to include different people. And you can't do it at all. And I think I covered this in another video. It can get really dicey. There can be a lot of problems with it. Like, in my opinion, you'll never get it perfect. If someone's looking to criticize you on your inclusion of race, they're always going to win that argument, or they're not going to win the argument, but they're always going to have. They're typically negative people, and I don't want to get political, but there's. I think at one time I talked about an example of on this vlog of where I had given an assignment of. I'll just go through it really quick. I was given an assignment to show teamwork, right? And so they wanted me to show all the different ethnicities, and these people were this was a corporate illustration, really boring, but they were supposed to be helping each other lift boxes and stack them. So my first rendition, I had the African American guy directing traffic like he was the manager and pointing of where to put the boxes, and I had the white guy or white gal and an Asian working on lifting the boxes, and the Hispanic guy was carrying one in. And we got in the conference call, and they started saying, well, somebody threw it out there and said, well, does it look like the African American guy is lazy because he's just pointing and telling him where to put it? And then someone else said, well, he's the manager. And then they got into this big argument and everything, and then they decided to switch it around, and anyway, it was you can't win that, but you do want to try to include. And I think most normal people will get that you're trying to include everybody, and they won't make a big deal out of it. So, and in fact, a lot of art directors and editors that I've worked with before are like, just throw them in there. We don't care where you put them, just put them in there anywhere, and it's going to be fine. So I did this illustration because I knew that I was weak on my portfolio. I got to get this on the website, which it'll eventually be on there, and then I'll have more ethnicity on my portfolio. So there you go. It's another reason why, personally, I would rather all my children's books. Maybe I shouldn't say this. I do love doing kids. It's just so much more challenging. It's easier to do animals, and I love doing animals. I love playing with the shapes of animals. And I was going to say I would almost be happy if all my books were animals, but I'd hate for some art director to hear this and go, oh, well, he doesn't want to do a book with kids. No, I still do if the story's great. It just is harder because then you're dealing with these race issues. Animals, you don't deal with race or gender. And so you just don't have to worry about that. It never comes up, and it solves those problems. And you don't have to, when kids look at it, I don't feel like they're going to feel like they're not included, because I do feel like, if I were growing up, and I have no reference of this, but I, using my imagination, I would say if I grew up as a minority, I would feel pretty hurt if all the books had white kids in them. So I do think that we need to be sensitive to that, and be as inclusive as we possibly can. Again, the animals solve the problem for me. Okay, so I think I left off on race. Yeah. So the next one is groups. So showing families, friends, classmates, and different occupations, different groups of people, etc. You can put etc. behind every single one of these, because there's no possible way that my list is complete. But yeah, showing those different groups working together, doing things together, having conflicts, whatever the story is that you're illustrating. And this might be a good time to talk about this too, because I'm sure that this question will come up, is like, how do I get the subject matter to draw all these things? And I would say re-illustrate stories that you've known from your childhood, things you're familiar with, situations you've been in. You're going to have to create your own assignments to round out your portfolio. You're going to have to use your imagination. You can illustrate other people's stories. You can re-illustrate classics. You can get these in your portfolio in a lot of different ways. A lot of the images that I have on my personal website are images that I just came up with, like this one was just, I needed an image for Christmas. And I thought, I just kind of came up with a story of an elf that's kind of naughty, that has a sweet tooth that sneaks off with stealing some of the candy decorations in Christmas Town or something like that. That's it. And then because of that, it allowed me to draw all these really fun candy shapes. It allowed me to draw a little character. I'm getting environments, and I'm going to get to that. The winter environment, really colorful lighting, and the cool and warm tones and stuff. So it covered quite a few things. The next one is animals, and I would suggest that you put anthropomorphized animals. That means animals that have human characteristics, right? So animals that are doing things that a human would do. Maybe they look like they're having a conversation, or they're playing. Animals in nature don't really play much. I mean, yeah, they appear to play sometimes. There are some videos. There's gonna be somebody that's gonna put show me. There's some links on Facebook I've seen where it looks like animals are playing. So, but in general, just basically taking amphibians, mammals, fish, reptiles, insects, and trying to include those different groups. I did a book. I was asked to illustrate a book for Penguin called Nasty Bugs. And I don't know what they saw in my portfolio, but I have done a bunch of insects in the past. And I guess they felt confident enough to give me that book, and I had to illustrate all kinds of different insects. The next category would be to include different creatures. So like robots, dragons, monsters, aliens, ghosts, things that are not necessarily of this world. Those are important. There are all kinds of children's books that include aliens and ghosts and monsters and all those sorts of things. Another one is vehicles. Lately there has been a push to illustrate books for boys, and a lot of like heavy equipment, cars, trucks, things like that, boats, planes, construction equipment. The next one is props. So having items, household items, garage items, kitchen items, farm items, office, food, games, toys, bathrooms, schools, etc. So just items that you'd find in different environments. If you can find a place to include those, again, you're not going to be able to hit all these notes. But again, the portfolio that's more well rounded out is going to be a bigger net, and that's what you're looking for, right? The next one is environments. So I think you should do, and this one's a little more specific. I think you should do interiors and exteriors. Okay. And before I go into this one, I should say that when in general, this is just because it's popping in my head now, so I want to hit this now before I forget to include it. But when I review portfolios, it seems like people fall into different patterns of things they like to do. So this kind of goes along with the what if I don't like to draw certain things? Well, most people answer that in their portfolio by drawing the same types of things over and over and over and over and over again. So if that's a tiny net, and if it's done really well, then an art director sees it and they're like, this is the perfect illustrator for this job. But it might be few and far between before you get those jobs, or you might never get it. It might never come. So again, make sure, like, for a long time, I just did outdoor scenes, and I didn't like doing anything inside. And I find that a lot of my students at UVU have a hard time with interiors. So I make sure that one of our assignment is done inside of a house or building or a dragon's lair, or in some sort of space that's confined that has walls or boundaries. So interiors, exteriors should do modern landscapes or environments, vintage, ancient. You should go for houses, apartments. Think like, old city versus new house construction. Sometimes I'll see people's portfolio and it looks like everything's happening in today's world, and they're eliminating vintage stuff. And if somebody has a book that deals with, New York in the 50s or something, they're probably not going to get that job. Winter and summer, day and night, land and sea, earth, outer space. These are kind of opposites, right? And then desert, forest, tropical, and Arctic environments. Including those different things just going to make you more marketable. The next two are super important, and that would be action, showing action, so things falling, breaking, sliding, moving fast, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, on action. And then also showing emotion. Emotions probably should have come before action. In fact, emotion should have probably been closer to the top of the list. So important. In most of the illustrations that you're going to ask it to do for a children's book, or even for a novel or anything, you're going to have to show complex human emotion. Anger, happiness, sadness, fear, confidence, curiosity, love, sleeping. I put sleeping in there even though that's not really an emotion, but that's a state. And some people can't show someone sleeping. They look like they're in pain or something when they're sleeping. Pain would be another one. And then any other emotion that you could think of that you think might be important to include in a portfolio. And then the last one I have here is camera angles. And this is probably where I would say people don't vary their portfolio enough. And that is in the camera angles. And I call it camera angle, but really that's our point of view, right? So if you're taking pictures with a camera, that's you're behind the camera, that's your point of view, right? But as an illustrator, you have to choose those shots in the way you draw, and you're doing this basically the exact same thing. So establishing shots, close-up shots, medium, distant, high angle, low angle, profile, dynamic, and point of view. Point of view would be that where you might even see the character's hands, but you don't see their body because the camera's like coming in from their chest or from over the shoulder or something like that. And so that's the list. Now we went over this like crazy in our children's book class. Again, this is a plug, and I might just add, I often try to slip in, the whole svslearn.com plug, but I might say this too. Like on this vlog, part of my shtick is teaching you or giving my advice on what I think you should do to have a successful career as an illustrator. As part of that, I think it's good for me to live by my own example by sharing things and marketing things, because I am a serial entrepreneur. I think it's good to also share in a good way the things that I'm working for. Am I trying to get you to go to my website and possibly buy? Absolutely. Do I want everyone to buy something if it's not for them? No, I don't. But this is a way for me to share something of value, and also introduce you to something that you might actually like. And I think that's how you should market. If you're ever doing something online and you're trying to market, the worst thing you can do is just constantly tell people, go to my website and buy this thing, or go here and like this, or I think this is actually the best approach, is to introduce people in a soft way by basically just mentioning that you can get something for free, and then you can also get more if you want to. You can dive in more, and so anyway, I just want to say that we go into depth on these, on the camera angles, especially in the children's book class, and we explain a lot of these things. So if you get the list and you don't completely understand all of it, I think for most people it's going to be pretty explanatory. But if you want to see examples of it, we have that in our children's book class. Okay, so how do you get this is if you go to svslearn.com and you click on the forums tab, okay? Click on forums. It's just one of the tabs at the top of the website. And just search the title of this video, what to include in your portfolio. It'll come up. And you'll be able to see this list. You'll be able to see my post. You'll be able to see people commenting on this topic in the forums. And yeah, so there you go. I really hope this helps. I wish I had this list when I was getting out of school, because it took me such a long time to figure this out. And if I would have known if I could have strategically planned out my portfolio from the beginning, I think I would have been a lot further along a lot sooner. Again, don't kill yourself. This can take years to accomplish all this, but I think you should be trying to check these things off along the way. And if you've already done something that's on the list, unless it's just a killer illustration that you can't leave out of your portfolio, try to include other things in your portfolio so that you're really rounding it out. And there we go. That's it. So do not subscribe to my channel unless you want to see more videos like this.